Welcome to Salaam Nerds Podcast. We do reviews and recaps of your favorite TV shows, movies, and current events.
Yo, it's the Salaam Nerds. My name is Steve, aka Watch the Geeks. I'm here with my boy Chad.
We drop live episodes on YouTube on Sundays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays at 10:30 p.m. Eastern. Thank you to all our supporters. Please help us by subscribing and leaving a good review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. All episodes can also be found everywhere podcasts are found.
Yo, Salaam Nerds. It's your boy Neebs, aka Watch with Neebs, and I'm here with my co-host Jeff, aka DJ, the wonderful DJ of Salaam Nerds.
I was really curious what the intro nickname was going to be. I definitely did not expect that one.
I know. We are actually supposed to be on hiatus right now, but we came back from hiatus to talk about The Wonderful World of Oz and the amazing movie that just came out, Wicked, and we can't wait to get into it. What about you, Jazz? Are you excited?
I'm excited. It was such a good movie. I can't wait to talk about it.
Oh, but not only are we going to talk about the movie, but we're going to talk about the musical, the play, and we're going to talk about the book. But we will not. Yeah, there is a book, and we will be spoiling stuff that happens in the book. We're going to talk about what's different between the book and the movie, but we will not be talking about things that happen in part 2 of the musical, the book, and the movie. But we will be talking about part 1. So it's going to be fun, and I think you guys are going to be in for a surprise because the book is a lot darker than the movie. In fact, it's very dark and a little bit sexual. So there's a lot of sex in it. There's a lot of sex. There's so much sex in it. It's crazy.
Really?
It is a very horny book. Like I have to tell you.
What?
Yes, some of you guys might not know it, but it is not a PG book. Like you watch this movie and you're like, oh, it's PG, Ariana Grande, it's so cute, it's pink, it's green, I love it. Oh, and your kid's gonna be like, oh, let me go and read this book. Do not let your kids read this book. This book is so dark. It is MA, mature audience. There is R wording, and if you don't know what R wording is, TikTok lingo for bad stuff happening. There is a lot of adultery, some animal stuff happening. It's a lot.
What?
It's so I have read the book, and I'm a big believer that I think putting the movie picture on this book is it's a PR disaster.
Oh my god, they already did it with the actual toys. They actually had like a porn site.
I know, and those two things together are going to tell a story that they don't want to be told.
Oh my god. It's worse than It Ends With Us.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, yeah. Not so.
I mean, yes, different thing, but still.
Yeah, kind of.
It's a disaster.
It is a mess. But yes, this is not a book that you want your kids to read. It is very mature. You're gonna have to explain a lot of things to them. If you do, I'm not saying what to do. It's your kids. Do what you want, but I would not personally do that.
We should introduce our guest because now I just want to dive into it.
Let's introduce our guest. First, I want to introduce. We've seen her on the show a bunch of times. Natasha, welcome back to the show. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks, guys, for having me. I'm excited to be on again.
Yeah, tell the audience a little bit about you and your show that you do on YouTube where people can follow.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm the host of a talk show called Sham Ki Chai, which means afternoon tea, and I interview Pakistanis around the world doing really cool things. We just actually wrapped up our 4th season where we actually got, sponsored by Collabs, which is the WeWork of Pakistan, and we dove into the startup scene in Pakistan and all of the cool entrepreneurs that are out there and the companies that are coming out. And so if you have not seen it yet, then head over to YouTube at Sham Ki Chai and check it out.
All right, guys, check that out. And also, we have on our show Sarah. Sarah came straight from Universal Studios today. How are you, Sarah?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm a little tired. I was stuck in traffic, but other than that, doing good.
No, was there any special Wicked stuff happening at Universal Studios?
Yeah, so they have 2 different stores with Wicked merch. There's a lot of cool Wicked merch. We went a couple weeks ago, and the stores were a little bit bare. because they had to pull all the toys off the
yeah,
shelf.
yeah.
They accidentally put a link to an adult website instead of the link to their movie website. But the dolls are back. The Mattel dolls are back on the shelves. They also did a little takeover of one of the restaurants, so they have like Wicked themed food, and like a nice little photo op. The one in Orlando has like a full like immersive experience. We didn't get that in Hollywood. We just have the stores and the little restaurant. But lots of people excited about Wicked. Also, they're playing Defying Gravity as those, you know, if anyone's been to Universal Studios Hollywood, they have all of those giant escalators.
Yeah.
Listening to Defying Gravity as you're going up a giant escalator is an experience.
I have a funny story about that. So a few years ago, I did something called the Zero G experience, where they take you up on a plane and you experience zero gravity. So you actually get to experience weightlessness. And of course, they played Defying Gravity. So that was really, really cool. They played Defying Gravity and then another song by OK Go and all this stuff. It was really cool because I think it all has something to do with zero gravity. But it was a cool experience. But we're going to talk about this. We're going to go into the lore. We're going to talk about the book. The thing about this is really interesting is that people don't know, but this was a book, and then it was a play. It was a book that came out in 1900, and then a 1900, 1900. Then a play came out in 1902, and then we actually had in 1939 the actual movie that everybody knows about, which with Dorothy and everybody, the wonderful.
Oh, the Wizard of Oz. I was like, Wicked was not written in 1902.
No, sorry, the Wizard of Oz was written in 1902, and it has and it has like about 14 books connected to it. Like, we only know the first book, and some people know the second, but there's actually like 14 books connected to the Wizard of Oz universe that people don't know about. Wow. And then they had a play about it, and then it had a movie, and then Wicked came out as a book, and then a play and a movie. So it's kind of repeating itself. It's like book, play, movie, which is pretty cool. Which one sequel in the middle, they did have a sequel for something called The Return of Oz, which was a Disney movie, which kind of goes into what happened when Dorothy came back, and then she came back to the world and she's telling everybody about Oz, and her aunt thinks she's super crazy, and then they puts her in like an insane asylum thing where she gets like electrocuted, and then she runs away and she ends up back in Oz and has to save the people of Oz once again, and then she comes back. So it's actually a very scary, kind of creepy movie. Sarah, have you seen this?
Yes, Dorothy is played by a young Fairuza Balk. And
from Charmed,
one of my favorite movies. I absolutely loved it. So my mom is a Wizard of Oz super fan, so I've read probably 6 of the Oz books.
Ooh.
And we watched it all the time. And Return to Oz was a VHS that was almost worn out in our house from how
it is low-key kind of creepy. Like, it was not for like, it was not like, it was made by Disney, but it wasn't made like super cheerful or anything. It was actually kind of dark and a little scary, but the special effects actually hold up really well to today's age. Like, it wasn't that bad. And I was
Where
like,
can we watch it today?
It's on Disney Plus. Disney Plus has it. Yeah. And then another movie came out, which was a spin-off also by Disney, called Oz the Great and Powerful, with James Franco and Mila Kunis and Michelle Williams. And a few other actors. Zach Braff is in it. And that is very different than the Oz we know, because it's interesting, because The Wizard of Oz, the book, is in public domain. Anybody can make a movie about it. Any company can buy it. But the MGM version of it, which is the one that we know with Dorothy and the Cowardly Lion and everybody else, is specifically copyrighted by MGM. So there's a few things that they cannot do in that movie that they could do in this movie. And it's really different because like it changes a lot of things, but it keeps a bunch of things very similar. It's very interesting, like what they can and can't use. So like, for example, people don't know this, but the red slippers are actually silver. And they changed it for the MGM movie because it was going to be in Technicolor, and they wanted it to be, they wanted it to like, pop a little bit, right? They wanted it to pop a little bit in color because there weren't that many movies in color, and it starts off black and white and sepia tone and comes out in color. And that was why they changed it from silver to red. And now in the book, it's basically silver, so they can do whatever they want as long as it's the same in the book. But if they did something specific for that movie, then that is copyrighted. So it's very confusing, very like, mixed up, but it is a very interesting story about how like what you can and can't use when it comes to the Wizard of Oz. In fact, like we can make our own Wizard of Oz right now if we wanted to.
Wow.
Dibs
Yeah.
on being Tin Man.
Because you don't have a heart.
Yes.
Aww.
Yeah. that makes sense.
That
That
I need
makes
a new
sense.
one. This one's broken.
Wait, would that make me the Scarecrow? Because are we picking characters?
Why not?
Why not? Jazz, would you be Alphaba? Or would you be Glinda? If our podcast was Glinda and Alphaba?
I don't know anymore, okay? Because you just told me a lot of things about Wicked. I don't know, man.
All right. Listen,
I'm confused. Help me out.
all right. Well, we'll talk about it. We're gonna talk about it. All right. So, also a cool thing that people don't know is the name Alphaba comes from. Sarah, you wanna answer this?
Yeah, it's essentially L. Frank Baum, but kind of like smushed together. It's his little homage to that.
Yeah. So his LFB. So it just sounds it off like L. Fa ba. So it was going to be la fa ba, but then they were like la doesn't sound right, so he made the la the L fa ba, and that's how you get the name, which is really really cool. I love that they did that. So lots of cool stuff happening. All right, so the movie starts off with the time dragon, and they talk about a lot about this in the book, the time dragon, but they don't really focus on it too much here. A little bit, you get to see it, so it's like a little bit of a reference to it. We get to see the yellow brick road, and we get to see Dorothy and the Tin Man and this Cowardly Lion and the Scarecrow, and they're walking to Oz, and it lets you know that this movie is the prequel to that, but also happening at the same time. It's very confusing. So what they decided to do was start at the end when the witch dies, and then they're going to go and explain how, with the flashback, how Glinda and everybody knew the witch. I like the way they did this. It's really interesting. Sarah, what are your thoughts about that?
I liked it. It really cemented it as a prequel. I think there was a lot of people, and maybe it's because I've been neck deep in Wicked since I read the book in 2003 after I heard the musical. I think cementing it by saying, okay, she died. Remember in Wizard of Oz when we threw the water on her and she died and they had to get her broom right, kind of reminding everyone of where it is in the universe. And then you can go back and say, well, how did that end up that way? Right.
Yeah.
Is helpful. But I also think that hearing the clock of the time dragon in the first like 3 seconds of this as a book reader was like, oh, what are they going to do?
I know.
There's a pretty raunchy scene inside of the clock in the book. Which I won't go into detail, but it's pretty it really sets the tone of raunchiness throughout the entire book right there at the beginning. Where it kind of made me think like, oh, are they going to go? And I think the tone of the movie is a little bit closer to the book than the stage musical. The stage musical is very
it's theatrical. It's very theatrical. Whereas this is a little bit more like cinema.
Like how all the Grimm's fairy tales and stuff, all those were really dark and then they Disneyified them. It's essentially the Disneyified version, right? They take out all the stuff you can't show to kids.
Yeah. So they start at the beginning and they're all happy that the witch is dead. And Glinda is basically saying, hey, the witch is dead and she's kind of part of this facade, and they sing No One Mourns the Wicked, which, first of all, Ariana does such a great job in this, like insane. So does Cynthia, but like we start off with her and you're just like, damn, she was born to play it. And you can really tell when she has these like micro facial expressions that like she's kind of showing like, hey, I'm part of this facade, but I'm also like not part of the facade. And they have her burn the effigy, which they low-key already had ready, which I thought was funny. They just had that shit ready to go, which was wild. And if you listen to the music, they do show a little bit in the beginning. There's like, you can hear a little bit of Somewhere Over the Rainbow. You can hear a little bit of Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead. Really cool nods. And we even get to see little rainbows. I think it's really cool. And then she's kind of just like these Munchkinlanders are they Munch? Yeah, the Munchkinlanders are kind of just like really just like all about her death because of the propaganda that we learn at the end of the movie is made about her. Natasha, what are your thoughts about how this movie starts out?
I mean, I thought it was a great way to start out, kind of like what Sarah said, setting the tone, reminding everyone, because I'm sure like no one's really like kept up with like, you know, the Wizard of Oz movie, unless you're like a super fan or something, right? Like movies or books or whatever the case is. I didn't even know there was a book. And so not only am I learning about the book, but all of the other types of content in the book all at once. So I'm like in shock right now. I watched the play. And I watched the play, it must have been 10 years ago in Vancouver. And I have this like vivid memory of like how good the first act was. Because I remember walking out thinking it was over. Because I was like, how do you follow this? Like, this is incredible. It was so theatrical. And she like rises up on stage and there's like all of this stuff, everything they kind of did in the movie. But, and then I'm like, well, time to go. And then it was like, no, there's a whole other act. Like you have to stay. But, that's how I got introduced to it. So I was super excited about the movie when it came out because I was like, oh yes, like I get to like experience this again. And I think all of like you said, the nods to the different types of music, the way Ariana, like you could see the internal conflict, especially when the Munchkinlanders are questioning her.
Yeah.
And well, what makes someone bad, right? Or like, weren't you friends with her? And she's just like is having these like like you said, micro moments, right? And I thought she did a really, really good job.
Yeah, she said in one of her interviews that like Glinda is the most fake when she sings the highest note. So the higher the note she sings, the more superficial and fake she's being, which I find really, really interesting. Jazz, what were your thoughts of the beginning of the movie as someone who has not seen the play or the book?
I mean, I thought it was great. Like, just dive right into musical territory. It was a lot of fun. The beginning, I mean, I've heard Defying Gravity over and over. I think it's one of the best songs ever, right? So I knew that much. And I was like, oh, okay. I hear some tones here and there. I get that. But yeah, going in, I had no idea what to expect. It was beautifully done. Right now, I'm just still in shock about everything you told me. So let's keep this going, because I really want to dive into that a bit.
If you're in shock about what we told you, let's get into the biggest changes that we actually know of, and that's the beginning, because the movie only gives us maybe like 5 minutes of Elphaba's parents' storyline, where basically it just shows that, you know, Elphaba's mom, Melinda, is married to this guy, and once he leaves, she has a guy over and she drinks this green potion, and it's assumed they had like an affair. It's so much worse than that. It's so much worse.
What?
Yeah. So basically, like, Elphaba's mom, Melinda, is basically, as a teenager, she what did the kids say? She has a hot girl summer occasionally.
Many hot girl summers.
She has many hot girl summers as a kid, and then when her husband goes away on his missionary retreats and, you know, tries to go and spread the gospel of like their unionist religion or whatever, what she does is she lets any guy who's passing through to pass through.
Oh,
like
wow.
any guy.
Oh my God.
And she, I think she does something along the lines of self-inflicted R-wording. If you don't know what R-wording means, it rhymes with a certain fruit that's green and small, right? So what she does is she takes these things and she chews them, and she kind of roofies herself and lets people who come by have their way with her, so that she does not remember, but she can also partake in whatever's happening. So she doesn't have the guilt.
Want to do it if she doesn't want to remember it.
That's what the nanny says to her when she calls her off. She's like, "You don't even have the benefit of a good memory." Like, what? Yeah.
Is the nanny a bear in the book too, or no? Like,
no.
The nanny is actually not in the movie at all.
Oh, so the bear that grabs her is not the nanny. The bear,
the Dulce bear is not a character in the book that I remember, but she has a separate nanny, and basically, yeah, the mom's like,
but somehow only gets pregnant twice.
Well, yeah. Somehow only get pregnant twice, but it's
Actually 3 times. They do. There is a younger brother.
yeah. So
Also.
he has a younger brother, and the
Oh.
reason they didn't put the younger brother, his name is Shell. The reason they didn't put the younger brother in the movie is because they wanted to explain why the father does not like Elphaba, because Nissa was the reason she died. But he doesn't blame Nissa, he blames Elphaba because the mom took all of these
Wildflower.
potions and medicine to make sure that her second kid doesn't come out like Elphaba. And that's why the second kid was in a wheelchair. In the book, she's actually doesn't have any arms either.
Oh.
Yeah.
Ooh.
But instead of blaming you know, the child, he blamed Elphaba. Now, this doesn't happen in the book because they have a third child, and the mom dies during the birth of the third child.
Mm.
So you can't blame. In fact, the dad is actually much nicer in the book. It's actually the mom who's like really, really terrible to Elphaba, but then she does decide to kind of like her. The dad was more, I would say,
Yeah.
avoidant.
And then
right?
the mom also gets a boyfriend at some point, and the dad's like, "That's chill." So they've got like a polycule thing happening.
Yeah. So there's a guy
If
who
you find
shows.
yourself asking like, "Why would that happen?" It's like you're reading the wrong book. Like there's
Yeah.
so many moments where you're like, "Huh."
I'm so shocked right now. And in
Yeah.
like none of this process did the dad be like, "This is not my kid." Like it came out green. She
Yeah.
sleeps with everyone. Like
Well, but he didn't know she was sleeping with everyone until she starts sleeping with this guy named Turtleheart, who shows up. He's a glass blower, and he takes a liking to her, and he ends up like moving like in the neighborhood, and he has an affair with Melinda like all the time, and then he started having the affair with the father all the time, and they just
Ooh.
became kind of like a
Okay.
throuple. Unless I am mistaken, Sarah, is that accurate?
No, that's accurate.
Yeah.
It's kind of. We find out later that the dad's like into it essentially.
Yeah. And then the interesting part is you would think that like so we don't know who's the father of Nissa. And you would think that he thinks Nissa is his favorite child because he knows this is hers, but he actually likes Nissa because he thinks it's the guy's. He thinks it's Turtle Hearts, and that's why he likes her more. So in the book, she's his favorite because he thinks that she is the child of Turtle Heart, which would be counterintuitive from what you really know. But it's really, really interesting. But I think in the second book, you actually find out that he is the true father of Nessa Rose. Is that correct, Sarah?
I do not remember. I remember almost nothing about the second book.
Okay, I think that's right. But I think like right now we're not supposed to know who isn't the father of Nissa. But in the movie, they simplify this. They take out the second brother, the brother altogether, and they make it like the father really, really hates her. But he really never really hated that much. He actually used to take her on missionary trips and have her sing to the missionaries and stuff like that. So she was more like ignored by the father and less hated by the father. But the book really makes you like hate the father because he's like uncanny, take her away, and like he's saying all these horrible things that doesn't really happen in the book. Also, she has powers like the minute she's born. That does not happen in the book. In fact, the only thing that happens is she's born with teeth and she bites people when she's born. And the midwives say like horrible things about her. It's pretty crazy. Sarah, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's very traumatizing. I think she bites someone's finger off.
Yeah, and they joke about like what if it was a man's private.
Yeah.
It's crazy. The book is weird, bro.
So strange. Yeah. So Gregory Maguire wrote other books. Wicked was the first one that he did kind of like this, but he did a book called Confessions of an Ugly Stepsister, and he also has one called Mirror Mirror, where it was that kind of vein of like we're telling the story through the perspective of another character. So I feel like nowadays that is like, oh, we've got Maleficent and we've got, like it seems kind of passe, right? Like everybody's done it, but he wrote this in 1995.
Yeah.
So it was like he wasn't the first, like, it's not a trailblazer, but it wasn't, we didn't have dozens of these movies.
Yeah, no, that's true. Natasha, what are your thoughts about these changes?
I am shocked. Like I knew Wicked as the play, so you can imagine the Disney theatrical like piece of like how I've envisioned Wicked, and so this is all coming like very. I mean, I don't even know what to say. And like, I mean, I did think it was like the whole like sleeping around thing was odd. I don't remember that was in the play, but obviously I just watched the movie, so I remember it in the movie, and I was like, huh, okay, sure. But I didn't know that there was this whole other Pandora's box in the book that like
Yeah.
I don't know, and because is he still also a mayor in the book?
No.
Or no, he's a
No.
mayor in the movie, right? He's not a more of a religious person. He's more of like a mayor or councilman or something like that.
He's like a governor or something,
Yeah,
right?
he's the governor of Munchkinland in the movie, and
Yeah,
I
so
believe
like-
also in the play. But yeah, in the book,
He's like a missionary.
the mom's family is in charge of Munchkinland, and
Yes.
it goes down through the women. That's where the lineage. So then later, it goes down to Nessa, which is not really a spoiler. Yeah. Yeah, so they changed it for the.
but
the
as
mom-
the
Didn't
eldest
go to
daughter, it
Alphabet?
doesn't go down to her.
Yeah, so it would go down to Alphabet. Alphabet would be technically the lineage-wise the next person to be governor of Munchkinland.
Munchkinland, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that doesn't happen because at the end she kind of
course she
leaves.
should,
So it
yeah.
happens to be Nessa Rose who takes over that role.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, so that part is super fun and super interesting. And we kind of that gets crazy. And then like we show up at the school, and that's when the real fun begins. Like this was in the book, this is like several chapters, and in the movie, it's like 2 minutes. Like they don't really show a lot about her childhood, but she does get bullied. I think that part's right. But you know they don't really show much else. They don't go into super much about it. But she does have a nanny, and the nanny is a big character, and the nanny comes to school with her. I think they removed the character of the nanny altogether, so she's not there at all.
So what's the hold on. So if she basically it's because is it true? Well, in the movie, she's not the one going to college. It's Nessa, right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
is that also in the book as well?
No, in the book, it actually Nessa doesn't come to school until like much later on. So
Yeah.
it's really just Alphaba and Glinda together, and basically Nessa doesn't come till like I think maybe a year later or half a year later. And what happens is Glinda has I don't know, what would you call her? Amaklut.
Amaklut, she's kind of like a chaperone.
Chaperone,
like a constant chaperone.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
basically Glinda is a little bit Galinda. She's a little bit wealthy, and she wants to keep her chaperone to herself and doesn't want to share it with like a whole floor of girls. So that's why she ends up rooming with Glinda, because she tells her that her Amaklut chaperone has some kind of medical issue and she can't handle more than like 2 girls. So that's how she gets to be roomed with Elphaba. And in this, it's completely different. It's basically like she accidentally shows her powers, and because she shows her powers, she gets roomed, and like Madame Morrible likes her and wants her to be in the class, and because of that, she's stuck with her. In the book, Elphaba does not care about magic at all. She's into hard science. Like she's a STEM girl. Like that's what she cares about.
Hey.
So she doesn't care about science at all. It's Galinda who wants to be the sorcerer. So it takes a lot of it changes up a little bit.
It's also a change from the stage play, because in the stage play, Elphaba is joining Nessa Rose at school.
Yeah.
So she's coming to enroll at Shiz. So that's a change for the movie, that she isn't meaning to be at the school and just kind of gets there on accident. I can kind of see why they made. There's a couple changes that they make where I'm like, okay, that one didn't. I'm still working through it because it's not a big deal.
Not a big
I'm trying
deal.
to figure out maybe that's because we need to, build Elphaba's confidence. And if she's already knows that we're kind of like starting her off balance, right? She wasn't expecting this and then it happened.
But I don't. So see, there's where I get confused, because if she's a STEM girl, she obviously smart. Did she like not go to school? Like, why wouldn't she be the one getting starting college? Because she's older.
She is in the book.
In the book, yeah, but
in the book, she is.
In the movie,
It's just her dad hates her. Her dad does not like her and does not give her the
decides
privileges.
to keep her at home. Like, it would make sense to send her off to college, because then he doesn't have to see her.
But then other people will see her, and he doesn't want anyone to see her.
Yeah.
He's a politician.
So much,
I guess.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. But I did like that, when she first meets Galinda, she's like, "You're green," so they kept that, which is one of the things that's it's like Mean Girls. You can't just ask somebody why they're green, which I think is really funny. I did like that. We did have a lot of cool moments when she first starts school. From from the movie, like Jazz, like what are your thoughts about her when she first starts in school? How do you like that?
It reminded me so much of High School Musical. Like the whole ensemble of all the cast and characters, you got the popular girl, two best friends, and then, like eventually a jock comes in and, like all that, the nerdy girls. I was like, oh, okay, it's High School Musical. Cool. All right.
Yeah,
Let's roll with it.
Well, the jock is also very different in the book, and so is Bach. So we'll get into that in a
Oh,
little
boy.
bit.
Okay.
But before we get into the book, I just want to talk about the movie real quick because like this is just done really well. Natasha, I wanted to ask you like the songs and the way they're showing the school, like that was a real set. Like, what were your thoughts about that? Because I thought that was really amazing.
Yeah, it really brought me back to Harry Potter.
Yeah, I can see
The
that.
magic. If I mean, Harry Potter's not a musical, so whatever. But that magic of like this grand, like set and like all of these people and their uniforms and literally magic happening, right? And it was so beautifully done. It was like, I don't know if you also seen the Netflix show, The School of Evil and Good and Evil.
No, I haven't seen that.
No.
Oh, that's great. That's a great series. And so that has a very similar vibe too, where it's this magical school and it's beautiful and like so many parts of it looked like more Mediterranean architecture.
Yeah.
And the curves and the waters and the fountains and the colors and stuff. And it was just gorgeous.
Yeah. Even here, I feel like a lot of the architecture was they had the onion shaped domes that they have in like Middle Eastern countries and India, like the Taj Mahal and stuff like that, which I thought was really cool. One cool thing was like when Alphaba does her magic, we see like a wall break and underneath the wall, you see like 4 animals kind of like broken up into like 4 houses or something. But it lets you know that like animals were part of like education and stuff like that. And now very few of them are actually mentioned. So it's really, really interesting.
Yeah.
There's a Shiz University Instagram page. I'm gonna follow it.
Yeah.
Really? Yes, if you go to their website, it will make you a horrifying AI image of you in a uniform.
That's crazy. What do you guys think about the Wizard and the Eye song? I thought when she was singing, it was really cool. Some cool really things I thought about. There's one scene where she's in front of the stained glass mirror and she almost like doesn't have color for a second. She almost looks like, how she would normally look. And there's also this amazing scene where she's like running in the wheat and you can see her leap and like levitating and flying, which is reminiscent of the Richard Donner Superman film where Superman is running through the wheats and he takes this really large leap. And the tag for that is "You'll believe a man can fly," whereas this is like defying gravity. I felt like that was a cool nod to that. And another nod that it had was to the second book where she goes all the way to the end and there's no like water or river. All of Oz is surrounded by the deadly desert. And if you go and touch the desert, you become sand, which is really cool. And you can see it over the rainbow in the corner, which explains why Oz is somewhere over the rainbow. I thought that was a really cool song. And the way they put all these elements in different places was really interesting to see.
There's also blue birds that fly over the rainbow. Which is another nod. And they also, I'm so sorry if I'm talking a lot, but I'm like, this is my jam. I'm like, please let me talk to people about Wicked. But they do the same thing on the stage musical with the gel filters on the lights to degreenify her when she says that in the song. So I thought that was a nice nod to how they do that. It was like they give a lot of kudos to the stage musical, right? It's not like, and that was the thing that I liked, that it wasn't afraid to be musical, right?
Yeah,
there's a lot of musicals that, so starting out with a big number, and then The Wizard and I is one of those songs that doesn't really get as much love as some of the other ones, right?
Yeah.
Like we've all heard Defying Gravity, but The Wizard and I thought giving Cynthia Erivo a moment to shine so strongly, so early in the movie was really important. And she just freaking killed it. Like, especially because on the red carpet, she's so like intimidating with like the high fashion and the nails. And I'm like, you were just like incredible. But as Elphaba, she has that innocence to her, right? Like she's had a hard life, but this is the first time someone just told her like this curse that she has actually could lead her to incredible opportunities. And like, she did such an amazing job of showing that pure hope and excitement. And it was like, she looked so young during that song. I was like, I
Yeah.
believe that this is someone starting college.
Yeah,
Like there was an innocence in it that was like took me by surprise, if I'm being honest.
yeah. I also like how she talked about how she purposely wanted to have these micro braids and stuff like that and long fingernails to showcase her culture, but also show like how like her nails are her power, like as if like magic is coming right through her hands. I thought that was really interesting that she did that. I thought that was really cool. So they talk a little bit about the school, and this is where like the politics of like Oz gets, like, the play makes it like so much fun and so like musical, and you get the hair toss and it's super cute. But people don't know like the book is actually like really Game of Thronesy. Like there's like usurpers and there's kings and there's people who take other people's places and there's people who are trapped. There is lore and there is like the history behind it. It's very Game of Thrones-ish that like people don't realize about Oz. And there's like a whole history of stuff that happens. Like if you watch Game of Thrones or The House of the Dragon, they always talk about like big events that have happened in the past, right? Whereas this one, they talk about something called the drought. And when the drought happened, basically somebody needed to be blamed, and that's when the wizard showed up. And the wizard came, and he came in his balloon, and he was able to read this book, their magic book, basically. And because of that, he was able to save the town. So all these things kind of happen. Is really interesting. And then it kind of goes into like the book about how everything is tied to politics. Like when there is a problem, you need someone to blame. And this book starts off with talking about how they're using animals and they're blaming them. And something you don't notice in the play because you're not reading it is there are two types of animals. There are animals with the capital A and animals with the lowercase a. So there's like sentient animals and regular animals, and they're different. And what they start doing is they start in the book, their main thing is they're trying to make all these animals go back to not being sentient. They're basically turning back into regular animals. That's where when the doctor pulls the board, it says animals are meant to be seen and not heard. So it's like they're blaming things on them. There's not a lot of resources, and they're blaming that they're the problem to the city, which is where the politics comes into play for this book. And you realize that the entire book is based on like fascism and xenophobia and intersectionality and feminism and all these cool things that the book is talking about. This is where you kind of learn about all that stuff. What were your thoughts when you guys started to see the plot start to develop and it's like, oh, it's not a fun musical, there's actually a plot to this and there's more happening?
I think genuinely I like that the movie goes into it a little bit more explicitly than the play, because I remember seeing the play for the first time and being struck by how funny it is.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of comedy in the play, and especially with Galinda, right? They lean into that a lot. But I think a big part of it is that Dr. Dillamond is an actual goat.
Yeah.
Like a CGI goat here.
Not like Kobe Bryant or LeBron. He's an actual goat.
Not the goat, but a goat. Yeah, that they like on the stage play, of course, you can't have a real goat. So it's like a guy with like a weird kind of goat mask thing on.
Yeah.
But it's a lot more like emotionally impactful when you see him getting like pulled away by the horns, right? It's and his other little animal friends that are all, terrified. And I really liked that they made that part more explicit.
Yeah.
Even when he flips the board and he sees the message, like what you just said, animals should be seen and not heard. Right. And then you could just feel his emotions in that moment. Right. Yeah. And like I was literally like, oh my God, and then he like walks back and then the flower vase falls from his table. Yeah. He's just so sad and hurt, and it made me nobody says anything. Yeah. Except for obviously Alphaba later on helps him, but no one says anything. Everyone's quiet. No one does anything. And he's just like, go and leave. And I'm like, this is so true. Like you don't need to like create a fantasy movie for something like this. Like this would happen today, right now. Yeah. Nothing has changed.
Yeah. It's for his time. And Peter Dinklage does a great job. He plays the goat, and he does such a great job at conveying that even through CGI with his voice. Jazz, what are your thoughts about that?
So the goat was honestly one of my favorite characters. Like it was, yeah, he was good. Like, and then you felt for him like the entire time. And
Yeah.
when the board flipped over and said, animals should be seen, not heard, like you could hear like the sadness in his voice.
Yeah.
It was just so well done. Like, yeah, really, just my favorite character, really.
Yeah,
Second
okay.
favorite character.
All right. Well, speaking of characters, let's talk about a few more characters that show up, right? And there are very different, some of them from the book. So let's talk
Oh, no.
about Bach. So we're not going to talk about what happens to Bach, but you can pretty much assume what's going to happen to him a little bit. But in this play, Bach has a huge crush on Galinda, which is hilarious because the actor is actually dating Ariana Grande, which is really funny to me. And then he basically wants to go out with her, and she says, "Well, you know what? I would really love it if somebody asked out this poor girl, Nissa." And he basically goes, "I will ask her out for you." Kind of just like, to get in her good graces. And when he does, he asks her out to this Dust Bowl so that she can go out with Fiyero, which is very interesting. So she goes out with him, and then Bach goes out with Nissa. Nissa starts to get feelings for him, and she asks him, "Hey, you just did this because you felt sorry for me." But then at that moment, he sees her kiss Galinda and goes, "No, I really like you," even though that may not be true. And that's where the whole story evolves. And this is where it's really interesting because a lot of these characters are not this way in the book. One of the things that we know about Bach is like Bach doesn't really have that much interaction with Galinda. He has a crush on her, but nothing big comes of it in the book, right, Sarah?
Mm-hmm. They kiss once and then it's never mentioned again.
Yeah. And the reason for that is because
Not
he
even
says
plot.
he says that in the book, what happens is she basically, after what happens to the goat, she changes her name from Galinda to Glinda. And he goes, "Nah, I only had a crush on Galinda. Once she turned to Galinda, I wasn't really into her anymore." It's kind of what happened. So they really don't talk about that. Fiyero being, this, prince from another region. He's clean cut, shaven white boy. In the book, he's actually supposed to be brown. He is a darker skinned man. And he has like these blue diamond tattoos on him. And he supposed to look more like, someone who's from like North African Moor or like a Romani person or a Desi person. That's what he's supposed to look like. He's supposed to have like brown skin. In this, they made him like a clean cut, shaven white guy, the guy from Bridgerton, which is interesting because like two girls that are really close end up liking him in both shows, which I think is really funny. But Fiyero is very different from the book too. Sarah, what are some differences?
Fiyero is essentially like his personality. I mean, the role that he plays essentially with Elphaba develops much later in the book. It's
like
not
in the second part.
Yeah, it's not a real, love triangle type thing happening. And his personality is kind of like completely invented for the play. This, dancing through life, I don't really care about anything. That's not really what he is. That's not his personality. They just fully made that for the play, and I think it works for the play.
Yeah
In the book, he's not like that at all.
Yeah.
But,
and we're not gonna spoil the stuff in part 2, but like if we were, it would make more sense because in this he has a really big role. He has a very important role, and he's basically one of the main characters, right?
Yeah, and,
in the
and
book,
for those that had no part 2 of the play, I think they did a really good job of kind of foreshadowing the stuff that's gonna happen. And that's also a very funny thing. And in a year, I'll be back to talk about it.
Yeah, definitely.
Where they actually they take a thing from the book that's like, it's actually her like going crazy and thinking something happened, and then in the movie they're like, "No, it happened," and you're like, So they lean really hard into that with some of the characters in a way.
I don't mind. I feel like for the play, it works really well.
Yeah.
someone mentioned, I think they also did a good job animating the ghost expression. When I watched The
Mhm.
Lion King, and one criticism with the animals didn't express their emotions really well, and it looked like normal lions. But with Wicked, they actually gave facial expressions. Yeah, because when we see the lion that they have in the little cage, you can see the facial expressions on lion, and I think it's safe to say that lion grows up to be the cowardly lion. Obviously, that's the one thing we can give away because I feel like that's super obvious. So that part was really cool to see that. And then we got some of the songs, and we get two songs that are just so good. One is like the Loathing song, which, man, the choreography is so good. Already a viral internet TikTok meme happening everywhere. And just like, not only can Ariana Grande sing, but she's like doing dancing and stunts. Like, she is a triple threat, like acting, singing, theatrical acting, comedy. Like, her comedic timing, it's so good. And now she's doing like stunts on top of this. It's like we've been sleeping on Ariana Grande. Like, and she's also like grew up in theater. Like, she's been a Wicked nerd for like ever. In fact, she was the official consultant, unofficial consultant on the show. Because whenever they try to change something, she would shut it down. She was like, "Nope, that's Bible. You can't change that."
She corrected uh a lyric error on like
Yeah,
they posted it on their official Instagram for Popular.
yeah,
And she like went in and she was like, "Oh, you guys got the lyric wrong. Sorry, that's not what it
yeah.
is." And I was like, and I had been singing it wrong for 20 years because I did not know that. So she corrected
Yeah.
me as well.
I think people think it's like proper poise when you talk to boys, but it's actually proper ploys when you talk
Mhm.
to boys, which is really good. And like the way these songs come out, like if just enough, like, similar to the play where you can appreciate it, but just enough of like their own little thing into it. It's so good. Like, it's so subtle, but like the people who really, really loved it can easily point out which parts are like what make Ariana Grande Ariana Grande. It's just so good. And then Popular is the other one that they do a really good job with. One thing that I noticed that they do in these songs that they don't do in the plays is they spread it out. Like, they don't have the song played fully through. There's conversations in between the songs, like Popular, Loathing, and Defying Gravity, which I think really breaks up the, I would say, this the pace, but also gives it enough time to breathe so you can like really appreciate what's happening in these scenes. Natasha, what are your thoughts about that?
I mean, I grew up watching Bollywood, and so I mean,
That's
Bollywood,
true. That's true.
it's like known for 3-hour movies, like 6.5-minute songs every like 30 minutes, dancing, choreographed dancing, the whole shebang. And so it's really cool to see that, like, you're getting more of that flavor within different, like, like different genres of movies or Western movies now. I think the breaking up of the song is really important because it's hard to like digest all the songs and the music, like if they go on for too long without a break in the middle, if you're not used to those kinds of movies.
Right.
And some people, like, because they don't go watch musicals because of this, like whether they're Broadway shows or whatever the case is, because it's just like the sing-songiness of like, the whole entire story being told in this sing-songy way can get a little bit overwhelming. And so I think it's really smart to ease people into a more of a movie that has a lot more of this sort of content in it. And I think they were just really smart about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Jazz, what are
I
your
mean, it's
thoughts?
like a 2-hour, 40-minute movie, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Jazz, what
and
are your
I
thoughts?
didn't realize it was 2 hours and 40 minutes. I was just
2 hours, 40
enjoying the
minutes.
music all the way through. I was expecting more music, honestly. Like, you're right. Like, having them ease it in, it was different. Because like I've seen other musicals like Hairspray and like all these, other movies that were formerly plays, right? They usually don't ease people into it. Like, it's just nonstop. So, I enjoyed it. It was great.
Yeah. Sarah, what are your thoughts about the way they changed up some of the music?
Yeah, I liked it. I like, and yeah, I was looking at 2 hours and 40 minutes and like, like looking at the math of the songs of like what else are they, how are they gonna pad this to make it 2 hours and 40 minutes? But yeah, like especially with Popular, because you can essentially take it as it's not just, okay, we sang popular, we're doing the makeover, right? Because then it would be disjointed. Whereas like the makeover is in, the ball gown bit from the play is in there as well, where she tries to make it a ball gown. And putting it all together within the musical number. So it's like, okay, that's the popular scene.
Yeah.
Right. We're making it, we're telling a full story within this, which is she's given her a makeover and right. And yeah, 2 hours and 40 minutes. I would like to say my 8-year-old sat the entire, like, people were making a big deal about it being 2 hours and 40 minutes. And I was like, there were multiple other small children in our theater and none of them got up to use the bathroom. Like everyone was sat for 2 hours.
Everyone was good.
If you can do it for a Marvel movie, you can do it for Wicked.
Well, my daughter famously saw Dune Part 2 in the theater at 7 years old, and sat through the entire thing because she loves Timothée Chalamet that much.
Fair, valid. So we can't talk about popular and all of the stuff that's happening at school without talking about the Oz Dust Bowl, right? So that's a big part of the movie. That's when they go to the ball where she gets humiliated, and we get to see where Ariana Grande character Glinda has a change of heart because she realizes that Elphaba did this nice thing to her because she wanted to be in the sorcerer school and she wanted to be a sorcerer. She did this amazing thing for her, and she gets to feel like really bad for her. And she says something like, oh, you know, she doesn't care what people think. And she goes, she does. And then she goes to her rescue while her own sister kind of just like stays there. And it's kind of like, I don't know her. Like, that's crazy. I love that the animals were playing instruments at the ballroom. Yeah, that was also really cool.
They were phenomenal.
They were great.
Yeah, it was really good. I thought this was done so well, and they didn't rush this. They took their time with this, and they really, really made us feel for Elphaba, and we really, really felt for Galinda, and it just felt so authentic of how their friendship was blossoming from this one moment. And I thought this was probably one of the best changes from the play and the book. I think it was really, really cool to really cement their friendship and how strong it was going to be from there.
Wait, it changed?
Yeah, I want to know what changed. That's one thing I do want to know. But because that scene brought tears to my eyes.
Yeah.
Like to
that
see,
was the one time I shed a tear. Yeah,
I was openly crying.
It was so just first heartbreaking to like just see her, and everyone's like, I mean, at least a lot of people have had this moment, I think, in their life where they just feel alone, especially when you're high school, you're going through this age and you're awkward and uncomfortable and whatever, right? And you're like, crap, like I've like gone through this feeling before. And then to like see her just do this dance by herself and further cement herself into it, right? And it just the whole thing and the way Ariana and the guy also brings it up, and he was like, it's not like you did anything.
Yeah.
Why are you feeling bad about it? And I think that really bothers her. And it's because it's after that she kind of like snaps like out of whatever persona she has, and then goes onto stage and like starts dancing with Elphaba. And the whole thing was beautiful. The whole entire thing. Yeah. And the fact that like, even though they're crying, like she's crying and still doing this dance, and Ariana is just there supporting her. And just doing this dance with her. It was a beautiful scene.
Yeah. What I found powerful about this whole sequence, no one said a word. Like, between like Galinda, Elphaba, like, yeah, there were people on the side snickering and, making comments, right? But Elphaba and Galinda just not saying a word and just rolling with it. Oh, so good. Like, I didn't think essentially a silent part of the movie would be that impactful, but yeah, just 10 out of 10.
And the music too was gorgeous. There's also notes of a song that comes later in the musical, was kind of played under it, which was gorgeous. My mom and I were both in tears. But there's also a moment where she does the thing where she holds her face and wipes the tear. And for me, as a queer woman watching it, I was like, I love many of my female friends. I've never held their face and gently wiped a tear. That was one of the moments that rang a little romantic to me as I was watching it, because I was like, that's an incredibly physically tender moment. Which then so many of the times in the play where they're like, yeah, we're good friends, and I was like, okay,
Yeah.
He has a kiss though, like definitely, and definitely in the book they have kissed.
They also I
Oh.
don't know if they brought this up in the book or in which lore, but it is known that she does not like to be wet. So tears coming down her face is more powerful than you know because she can't really get wet. In some, I think some iterations, it actually burns her when she actually cries. So
Yeah, in the book she's essentially allergic to water.
she is, yeah. So she
Oh,
bathes
wow.
with like oils and stuff. She doesn't actually like get in water ever. And her mom tried to drown her a few times, actually. Which
What
is
a book!
Ooh,
Like,
what?
like they do.
yeah. It's
Like
it's
in
very-
water or like in oil?
Yeah,
Like-
in water. Like she'll like take her out to the pond and hope she drowns, but she ends up not going through with it. But she tries a few times.
This
She
book
never goes.
is just a whole other thing.
Yeah,
Let me tell you, like,
go for it.
barely skimming the surface of this book, the
Yeah.
information that you've heard so far.
Well, even the Dust Bowl doesn't happen the way it happens in the thing. Like when Alphaba gets humiliated, she gets humiliated because she gets invited to somebody's like house or something, and she was not really invited. But the Dust Bowl was actually like people were getting it on and with animals, which maybe bestiality. Like it was
Professors?
yeah, it was wild. It was like a sex show
Ugh.
there happening there that they go to in the book. And they admitted this, and I'm glad they did. It did not need to be in here. But yeah, that was the Dust Bowl was pretty crazy in the book. It was not clean, I would say. Yeah. I make the same expressions. All right.
I like her just single out Natasha there, just moving her
I
to
know.
the center screen.
I just put her center on the screen because I was like, I wanted to see her facial expression.
Like horrified.
It is a little horrifying. All right, so let's talk about a little about the animals. So basically, the animals were the main teachers, and slowly there's very few animals that are teaching nowadays, right? So this is where like the allegories come in for everything, and you know they tell like the people need to be united for something, and basically what happens when they bring out they take away the doctor and they bring out this new guy, and he basically brings in this lion cub, and Alphaba gets so mad that she makes these poppies basically appear and make everybody go to sleep. Now this is a reference to the Wizard of Oz. In the Wizard of Oz, they actually go through the poppy fields, and what happens is the poppy fields makes everyone fall asleep except for the scarecrow. And this time around, it made everyone fall asleep except for Fiero, which is very interesting. So it's a callback to the actual Wizard of Oz movie that takes place. And again, the poppies make everyone fall asleep, and they go and they rescue this lion cub. And while they're rescuing this lion cub, Alphaba and Fiero have a moment, and they have this connection. And apparently, he's never same after that day. Natasha, what were your thoughts about these scenes about Fiero and Alphaba and her, being into each other, kind of vibing?
Yeah, I mean, unexpected, especially on how like her opinion of him starts out in like the beginning of the movie in the first like library dance that he does.
Yeah.
So there's that. Then there's this conflict of I just found my first best friend and she's with this like person, but now
Right.
I'm having this like moment with this person. And so I can just imagine the guilt and the confusion that you would have at that point, because it just like that's just like not supposed to happen, but I think overall, like from it starts to I think show the true kind of personality of what's his name, Fiero, yeah. It kind of shows his true personality a little bit, and it shows that he's a lot more in line with the way Alphaba thinks and the values that she has from like the way the movie presents it than maybe Galinda. And so maybe there's more that's supposed to be like there's more of a spark there than what he has right now, which seems very like superficial and like, oh, they're both hot, so they should just be together, and that's what it is. The scene was done beautifully, also the forest and going there and like saving the lion or the little baby tiger and everything like that. It was very cute.
Yeah. Jazz, what are your thoughts?
No, when you said like everybody fell asleep except Fiero, like is Fiero the Scarecrow? And like, are all the characters here like tied to somebody later in like the Wizard of Oz, essentially? Or
I don't know.
okay, all right, that answers that question.
We can't answer that.
Okay, then.
No.
In the book,
Thanks.
I will say,
It's my answer
Not
now.
in-
Like, good luck
Yeah,
changing my
not in the
mind.
book. Not in the book.
in the book, no.
Oh, not in the book.
no.
Okay.
Not in-
In the book, no. In the book, that is definitely not the
But
case.
then I'm guessing in the play it was. Okay, got it. Thanks.
we don't know. We don't know what way they'll go. They could go, maybe towards the book, maybe towards the musical. I don't know. We'll never know until it actually comes out. But yeah, that part is a cool little Easter egg. I did like it. So when they come back from this, Madame Morrible realizes that her powers are growing, and she writes this letter to the wizard, and the wizard invites Elphaba to come. And Madame Morrible's goal in this is to make magic viziers to the wizard. That's what she wants to do. In the book, she actually sends Galinda, Nessa, and Elphaba to go see the wizard, to be like agents for them. And basically, like, they want them to use their sorcery and powers to help the wizard kind of control Oz. Right. So that's really what's happening here, except they did not do it with Nissa, and they did not do it with Galinda. So that part's a little different here also.
I love the detail of in The Wizard and I, Madame Morrible says, I'll write it once to the wizard and tell him about you.
Yeah.
And we find out that she actually did not do that.
No.
She waited until she was sure that the magic was growing to let him know what's going on. I love how slowly she becomes sinister, right? Like, she's kind of mean to Galinda, but like Galinda, whatever, but yeah, that, and the build up to her in that moment when she turns around with all the flying monkeys, like, gave me chills. I was like, I can't believe I'm scared of Michelle Yeoh right now.
She does
right now.
She is such a good actress.
She does such a good job. As someone who's never done a musical, she killed it. Same thing with Jeff Goldblum. I don't know if he's done a musical before, but he killed it too. But one of the things that is really interesting is, like, it starts to rain, and we realize that she can actually control the weather. And what is a tornado if not part of the weather?
All of these connections.
Her hair also, if you look at her wigs throughout the movie, almost always looks like some kind of a storm or a tornado happening.
There's a lot of references to tornadoes in this. Even Elphaba's hat looks like a tornado, especially when it was in the water in the beginning scene. And then if you look on the glass slippers of Nissa, the heels are actually little tornadoes. So cool little references to some weather witches in this movie. Also, they did mention another teacher there, and it was Professor Mombi, who is actually another witch, and they don't show her, but they did mention her, and she is one of the main villains in Return of Oz, which is a sequel to The Wizard of Oz. And what she did with she trapped Ozma. Ozma is the true, basically, like, heir to Oz. Her dad was the main king before the wizard came over and usurped her, and she is the true and rightful ruler of Oz. So it's not actually named after Oscar; it's actually named after Ozma. So she is supposed to be the rightful heir to that. They do mention her in the on the board when the goat was actually talking about something. You see the mention of old Ozma, this Ozma, that. She is mentioned here, so she does exist. So I thought that was very interesting too. That is also a deviation from not just the Wicked book, but also from the Wizard of Oz books.
Yeah, I like the
still
Mombi
stuck
Easter egg.
on-
She's terrifying in Return to Oz.
Yeah,
She can, like, take her face off.
she could have
Takes her head off and swaps it for different heads. It's wild.
It's
It's
very,
a great movie. I will say I will not recommend the Wicked book, but I will recommend Return to Oz because it's a great movie.
I'm gonna watch it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna read the book now.
I recommend the book, just not for children. I feel like if you're old enough, you can take it. But
Yeah.
yeah,
No, I understand why the book was now banned by a local school district. I thought it was just like,
Yeah,
some
it
No.
should
crazy
not be in the
mom or
school
something.
library.
No,
It
But
should
no.
not be in the school library.
And who takes a book like that and is like, I'm gonna like Disneyfy this? Whose mind works
and
like
you know what? He did it immediately. He
Yeah.
like him and oh my gosh, I feel so bad that I'm forgetting her name, but Winnie, I think her name is Winnie. The like as soon as they picked up the book, they were like, "Ooh, this is like I got to make a musical of this." But it's more and if you read the book, you can see it that it's more of just the idea of like, what if Glinda the Good and the Wicked Witch grew up together and were friends,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
What happened that made people think she was evil? Like
Yeah.
essentially the question of, are people born evil or is
Or
wickedness, thrust upon them, right? We're
Yeah.
kind of like taking that idea and expanding on that, as opposed to, they definitely like took some pieces right from the book.
Yeah,
Very
someone says
loosely
Mombi
adapted.
is from the second Oz book in the series. She is the real witch doing magic behind Glinda's back, and the character of the Return of Oz was the character from Ozma of Oz, Lady Langolier. Yep, that is accurate. But yeah, I think what you mentioned is very interesting. It almost makes me remember the show Smallville. I don't know if you've ever seen Smallville, but it also starts off with like, what if Lex Luthor and
Yeah.
Clark Kent were friends as kid, and a prequel to that is. I wonder if Smallville was inspired by Wicked. Now that I think about it, it's very on brand. Just made me think of that. It's very, very interesting. But it's basically fan fiction. This entire book
Yeah,
is
it is,
basically
Yeah,
fan
pretty
fiction.
much, yeah.
I think Mamba and Langolier were put together as one villain, like MGM did with Lacosta, the Witch of the North, and Glinda is from the South, not the North. Yeah, Glinda
Wait,
is actually
Glinda's
from the South.
South?
Yeah, she's a South girl. She's a Saudi. She's from the South side.
Outside?
Yeah, they combined them together and they made her into one. But yeah, she is in the book, the Wicked Witch
Wait,
of the
there's
South.
a witch named Lacosta?
What?
Lacosta is the Witch of the North, and Glinda is
Yeah,
the
in the book,
South.
Lacosta was the Witch of the North, and Glinda was of the
Whoa.
South. But they combined them two together into one character.
I'm learning so much today.
Yeah. Someone just asked, should we watch the play first or the movie? I don't think it matters as long as I feel like my thing is always read the book first. Or later. I don't know. They're all good. I don't think it really matters which way you actually watch it. But I would say go the play. The play is already out, and at least the first half, you'll be like, oh, I already seen this. But the second half, you'll be like, whoa, I didn't expect all these twists and turns.
I feel like it depends on if you care to get the ending spoiled for you. Like there are some big things that happen in part 2. Surely some things are going to change. Like some things have to change.
Something has changed within her.
Yeah, something literally has to change because of the person that's cast. But I would say it depends. If you don't want to be spoiled, don't watch the play, because the ending, if you want to wait for part 2 of the movie. But what I would say is you can listen to the original Broadway cast recording of the full play, and you don't get that many spoilers. In fact, there's a song that's cut out of the Broadway recording because it would spoil too much of the plot. So you can listen to the entirety of it, like knowing that obviously Elphaba is going to become the Wicked Witch, right? Like we know how the story ends. So you could listen to the cast recording, the original Broadway cast recording of Wicked. But if you don't want spoilers, but that being said, if you're going to be on the internet,
you might as well just watch
Googled
the play
it.
now.
You
might as well watch
Googled
the play now. Like I was on TikTok for like maybe like one day, and like everything is spoiled. Everything is on there.
But people are also being a little obnoxious. As a certified theater kid, people are being obnoxious about it. Like, oh, it's because Oz dust is what we. And I'm like, yeah, that's the lyrics. Like we're listening. Like it's, nobody knows the foreshadowing of the. And I'm like, okay, calm down. Not everyone can see a Broadway show, right? Like. People are bickering about what's an Easter egg and what's foreshadowing. And I'm like, let's not fight. Kids. Let's all just enjoy the fact that this musical that we've loved for 20 years got made into a really shockingly good movie.
Solid movie.
Yeah.
All right.
That song definitely would give a lot away. I Googled it. I'm not even going to mention the name
because
the name itself will give it away. because I'm an idiot and I Google things.
Yeah,
Don't Google missing song Wicked Broadway recording. Like, just don't even do that.
I feel like we need to have like another episode with just all the spoilers because there's just so much to talk about that we can't talk about, but it's pretty crazy. All right, so at the final third act of the movie, basically what happens is she gets invited to go see Oz. Galinda starts coming with her. I love the explanation of why Galinda changes her name, and she's like, well, I want to pay homage to the doctor, for professor, and I'm gonna go by Galinda. The G is silent, which is just so funny, and I think she does such a good job of channeling Kristen Chenoweth, but also making it a little more modern in her own way. It's really, really cool. I love the little
scene right here in the beginning.
Yeah,
I actually recognized the face, and I was like, "That's Idina Menzel."
Yeah. Well, Idina Menzel shows up in the Wizomania play that they do later on once they get to Oz, right? Which is really,
like
really
right before that. Okay.
Yeah, so right before they get on the train, and there's like a uncredited cameo with Neil Patrick Harris. Apparently, he's a credited conductor, but it got cut out of the movie.
Oh.
Yeah, I thought it was really
Poor
interesting.
Neil Patrick Harris.
I know.
You would have loved that. Oh,
poor guy got cut out of the movie. But yeah, they have a little DDLJ moment where they try to get on the train. I don't know if you guys are that little Bollywood fans for all of you guys. But yeah, they go into Wizmania. Idina Menzel and Kristen Chenoweth are both there, and they're singing. And she hits her actual note that she hits in the thing, which I think is a little cool Easter egg. But once they get into Emerald City, you notice there are no animals in Emerald City at all.
There are hummingbirds, but they're working.
Yeah, they're all working.
And the monkeys, the monkey warriors.
The monkeys who are also like have to be working there. So they don't speak, and it's like almost like an apartheid state right there. It's pretty crazy what they're doing here. In fact, even the original in The Wizard of Oz, when you watch it, there are no animals in the Emerald City, and they don't know if that was on purpose or not. But the author of Wicked decided to use that and turn it into a plot point, which I think is really cool the way they did that. Definitely thought that was really, really cool. And one of the cool little Easter eggs is that I don't remember whether Idina Menzel or Kristen Chenoweth, but one of them went by the name Belinda, and Belinda is the name of the chicken in Return of Oz, which is a cool little Easter egg too. A chicken is like very important in the world of Oz for some reason. Chickens are super important. I don't want to spoil why, but it's really weird.
What?
Okay. Yeah, don't worry about it, man. But basically, there's like a chicken.
I'll Google it because I'm an idiot.
There's a chicken in the Return of Oz, and it has like a really important plot point. It's just so funny. All right, so they go and they finally go and meet the wizard, and he's in this entire contraption where you see, and he's like, "Oh, I didn't mean to do that," which is a little bit of a nod to like the Wizard of Oz because that's what he did because he was behind the curtain the whole time, and he decides to show them like what he wants to build, and he's going to build a road that's going to lead everyone to Oz, which is super cool. And we get to see how they decide what color to make the yellow brick rose, and it was Glinda who picks it, which is a cool little Easter egg. I don't think that's in the play. I think that's new. That's not in the book or the play. That's a cool thing for just the movie.
That's the only moment where I was kind of like, all right, guys, I get it. It's the Wizard of Oz. Because every other Easter egg I really found quite delightful. The cameos, the Idina and Kristen cameos. I'm actually very lucky because I saw someone on TikTok that was like, don't listen to the soundtrack before you see the movie.
Yeah.
Well, first I was like, oh, okay. I listened to Defying Gravity and like cried a little bit. And I was like, oh, but yeah, because they're credited on it. And I would have been able to recognize their voices. And I was like, oh, I'm glad I didn't listen to it all the way through. But yeah, that moment where it's like, okay, yeah, it's the yellow brick road. Like, okay. I was kind of like, I'm not. That was a little too. It was
on the nose. Two on the nose for you. I didn't mind it.
For me, that's like literally my only complaint.
Okay, all right. I didn't mind it. I thought it was all right. But we do find out about the Grimoire, which is this book that no one can read but Alphaba. And the reason that no one can read it is really strange because it was supposed to be that Oz is from Earth. He's from our world, and Alphaba is half. So she's half of both. So this is why she can kind of read what's in the book. So she's the only one that can read the book. No one else can. And because of that, she basically can just do these spells that nobody else can.
Yeah. And I liked how she was like, okay, mine now.
Yeah,
Pretty
she just
much,
took it.
yeah. Well, I mean, she was like, you read it. Like, she gave it to the Oz, right? And was like, you
Yeah.
can't read it, can you? You like literally have no magic.
Yeah.
There were gasps in my theater when she was like, "You have no real power," and then he goes, "Yeah, that's why I need you." People went, "Oh!" And I was
Yeah.
like, "That's the plot of the Wizard of Oz."
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, did you not see that coming?
85 years, but it was so funny because it reminded me of, I don't know if there's any musical theater people that have seen Hades Town, but Hades
Yeah.
Town is a retelling of Orpheus and Eurydice.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
people still gasp at the end of that play. And I'm like, that is an ancient Greek myth. Like, we know that happens, but
Yeah.
it's just a very funny collective moment of like, we were so enthralled. And I think Jeff Goldblum's the perfect choice because he's so likable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, that you kind of, in the few minutes you have with him, like, you kind of forget that that's a whole plot point in the Wizard of Oz, that he doesn't have any power. People just think he does.
Yeah. In
like,
fact,
we've actually bought into the propaganda because Jeff Goldblum is such a delight.
yeah. In fact, you see that like when they show him in the beginning of the Wizomania, he's reading the Grimacery and he's basically saying Omaha, which is just a city in Nebraska where he's from. He's just reading random words that they don't know about, but he can't read it because he's from Earth, and the people there can't read it because they're from Oz. So it's no one can read it except for Alphaba. So there's something special about her, and you don't find that out till later. But this makes her really suspective of Oz, and he says that she has no real power because he made her basically turn all these animals into winged animals, and you learn that they did it so they can spy on people. So basically it's his own little version of like George W. Bush's Patriot Act that he kind of just made right there on the spot so that he can spy on all his citizens, taking away some of their rights to privacy and stuff. And that's when you learn about and you want her to do so many more of these things. And she's like, well, no, what I'm doing is wrong and it's painful. And without any hesitation, decides to just go and run away, which I think is really cool because you can see how strong she is in her conviction. And Glinda being there with her going well, let's hear them out first. And you kind of can see Glinda is not as strong in her convictions, which I think is really, really interesting in this scene. What are your thoughts about that? What was that?
She's a puppet.
Well, maybe, but she's also learning. In the book, this is not very clear about what happens. They kind of, Madame Horrible actually puts a spell on them, and they kind of don't remember a lot of this interaction. And Alphaba runs away, and they kind of don't know what happens to her. So it's a little different, but in here it's more clear cut. She sees everything that happens, she knows what happens, and she seems to decide to be trying to talk some sense into her, but halfway through defying gravity, she realizes that she's going to do what she's going to do. And they do such a good job in that, where you're I can see her emotions and her mind changing throughout the entire song, and it's just so well done. What are your thoughts about that, Jazz?
I mean, when I think Glinda as the good witch, right? This wasn't very good witch, and I was like, oh,
propaganda.
Yeah. This is something, a lot of the other stuff I got, right? This one upset me the most, of what I was expecting. I was expecting her to actually have a good, strong moral compass. And then she was like, oh no, let's just both sides this thing real quick for a second. I'm like, what other side is there to silencing animals who could speak and taking away that ability?
Well, Jazz, I'm glad you said that, because what people don't realize is that Glinda is this morally ambiguous character, because even in the beginning when she's singing "No One Mourns for the Wicked," she does not think that Alphaba is a wicked. She's singing about herself. She thinks that she's wicked and no one's mourning for her. That's what those microaggressions on her face are.
Oh,
right?
I didn't think
So
about that.
so she knows that she has this like weak character and she has this facade, but she's never really been, even in the Wizard of Oz, she gives Dorothy these shoes that could have taken her home like the second she put them on, but decide to make her ass walk like miles and miles on a cobble road made out of like golden bricks. And there was a bullet train the whole time that could have taken you straight to Oz. Glinda's not good.
Oh my god, yeah. That
Also,
one hurt
Dorothy-
me the most.
Yeah.
And that just could be like who I am and what's going on in the real world. I was like, no, don't both sides this. I like
That's
you.
I saw someone say that when she changed her name, it was so performative. They thought she should have been wearing a blue bracelet, and I was like, "That's the funniest thing I've ever seen." And they like photoshopped that where she's like hugging her. That screenshot, they photoshopped a little blue
No.
friendship bracelet on her, and I was like, "That's the
No.
perfect way to describe her." Like she thinks she can fix it from the inside, right? She thinks she can work, maybe change the wizard's mind. Like it's one of those things where it's like, it's on one hand, she kind of has good intentions, but she's so naive and she's like, she knows better. She's almost like purposefully trying to be naive about it. She's just, no, I can do it.
She's never had to make a hard choice though, right? She's never had things not go her way. Even when they're telling each other secrets in the room and she doesn't like Alphaba's secret, she just like throws this tantrum and like hops onto the bed, right? Like she can't handle any kind of like difficult choice or path. And the fact that like it was just thrust upon her in this like micro like minute that she needs to make a decision, she's not equipped to like make that decision. She's going to do the comfortable, easy thing that she's always done.
The only thing that she does know is that she cares about Elphaba, and that's her only moral compass. That's her only guiding light. But she's not smart enough or strong enough to know how to make decisions based on that, right? And it sucks because like the more time she spent with Elphaba, the more she was truly growing as a person, and now she won't have that. And what's going to happen, is we can see that like Madame Morrible is going to take Glinda under her wing a little bit. Right. So we'll see what happens with that, because that's all she has. There's no way that like she knows what really happened. They're going to try to keep her secret. And they kind of start this propaganda campaign saying she's the Wicked Witch of the West because she goes to the Western side and that's where she resides. And it's just really interesting how big this propaganda campaign just starts off. And I don't know. I just find it really telling that like how strong and manipulating propaganda can be.
And it's so quick. Yeah. It's like, I like 25 minutes ago, I wanted to convince you to like, whatever, be like Oz's witch in the background, blah, blah, blah. And things don't work out. And it's literally within like seconds, you flip the narrative around and you already have, it's like you almost knew this can go one of two ways. And if it goes like the bad way, then this is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
It's like when they make the t-shirts for who wins the Super Bowl and they have both of them just in case. Like she had that. If she doesn't agree, we're going to say that her green skin is a manifestation of the wickedness inside. Like she didn't ad-lib that. Like they had that. It's a concession. She had it ready to go.
And she's evil for her to then go to Glinda and be like, okay, like this is how we're gonna, market this whole thing and what happened, and like this is how we're gonna use her. And Glinda's just, they're all kids, and so she's just evil.
Yeah, she is probably the most consistently evil person, other than the wizard, to be in this. Everyone else, they have a lot of moral ambiguity, but and she's I would say pretty close to the character in the book. Like she's probably the one that deviated probably the least from like most of the people, other than like, no, actually, no, even Alphaba deviated quite a bit. She has a lot of dark stuff that happens in part 2.
Yeah, in the book, Madame Morrible like gets up and essentially in front of everyone is like, "Hey, animals should be seen and not heard, guys." Like, she's really explicit about it in the book. Like, she's like clearly a bad guy.
Yeah, they don't just capture like the goat; they literally kill the goat, and like the nanny finds finds out, and then she puts a spell on the nanny to make her forget. Like, she's part of the whole thing. She's not like a bystander. She's one of the main architects of like all the stuff that's happening in the town. Yeah. Someone says Galinda during the opening looked like she was going to be ill when she was handed the torch to light the effigy. Yeah, that was very true. Like, you could Ariana Grande does such a good job in that scene. You could tell that like something is wrong, and then she's kind of like doesn't want to play this up, but she has to.
Yeah, even the expression on her face when she's doing the like, oh goodness, won, like good triumph over evil, and then the very first time she hears that like no one mourns the wicked, her face just like fall. It's so good.
So good.
She came down in a bubble, dog. Like, she's not a princess, guys. She's a witch. We finally got that figured out. Oh man. Yeah, no.
That's why she's a witch. Okay, yeah, that all makes sense.
Right? Like they're all witches. She's not a princess. Though she does turn into a princess. I think because she marries somebody who is like higher up on the like social class ladder. But that's what she is. She's a social climber. And that's really what she is in the beginning, right? That she wants to use people, and she wants the hottest guy, and she wants to be in the best class, and she wants to be the sorcerer. So she is a social climber. And then when she gets this opportunity from Madame Morrible, it's hard for her to be like, hey, what are my options here? I might as well get the one thing I've always wanted. But then we'll see what happens in part 2, because you don't know. But overall, what are your thoughts about this after going through a lot of this stuff? Natasha, you want to?
Yeah, I'm like shocked about the book. I'm like, process this. So that's on one side, and I'll have to process it later. I'm going to go and watch The Return of Oz. I still have some Thanksgiving prep to do, so that's what I'm going to put on while I'm doing this. And then I think the movie was just so beautifully done. I'm like, just the friendship that they showed, the acting, the dances, we didn't even talk about the clothing, the outfits.
Phenomenal.
Ariana Grande's like whole entire like wardrobe was phenomenal. Even with some of the stuff they put Alphaba in, as she's like kind of getting more confident and like all of that. It was fantastic. And so everything about the movie was great. And yeah, I thought everyone just did an amazing job.
Jazz.
Yeah, like Natasha said, I am still shook by the book revelations. I had a great time with this movie. Like, I'm not the biggest Ariana Grande fan for multiple reasons, but regardless of that, I still thought she was perfectly cast for this role because of how I think of her. And I'm like, oh yeah, she plays that part really well for some reason. But the real reason is because that's just what I think of her.
She actually wanted to be Alphaba, and after a while, she was like, no, Glendo is a better fit. But she's been playing these characters in plays since she was like 9 years old. And like when she had a tour going, she told her people that she would shut down the entire tour just to audition, and she would go back to taking acting classes and music classes to make sure that her voice is theater ready and it's like her acting is like up to par, so she doesn't forget. She was like, acting and singing are like muscles, and I need to like prep them if I want this. She wanted this like really, really bad, and I respect someone putting in the work.
Yeah. I can give her that. Like, she's very talented.
Sarah, as somebody who has read the books and the play, how did this live up to your expectations?
I tried. As I was watching more and more trailers come out, I was starting to get excited, and I actively was like, put your expectations down. Like, hold on. Like, hold it closely. Like, hold it loosely, right? But I was blown away. I was it's emotional. There were tears, but also watching it with my mom, who loved The Wizard of Oz, or loves The Wizard of Oz, and passed that down to me, and watching it with me, who was a theater kid that bought my mom tickets to see it on Broadway when I was a senior in high school as a Christmas gift. And then with my daughter, who is now singing the songs every day because she's obsessed with it. It was a really like full circle kind of emotional moment. And they nailed it. And I don't have any personal beef with Ariana Grande. That's just not the type of music I listen to. So, but the video of her getting the call that she was going to be Glinda, and she said, "I'm going to take such good care of her." Like that's what they did for me, is they took such good care of it. Like, I've been obsessed with Wicked since 2003, right? Since it first came out, when that original Broadway cast recording hit. And I was a sophomore in high school in my theater club. Like, when I was a junior in high school, I did What Is This Feeling for a drama competition, right? Like, I have loved it for so long, and it's very rare for that to be like, I loved it and then it lived up to the expectations. And for it to happen twice in 1 year with Dune Part 2 and Wicked is like, this is like my best pop culture timeline. That two properties I love very much had such a great, like, they took such good care of them this year. So I can't wait for Part 2, just on a personal level, but also, like, I cannot wait for everyone that doesn't know the musical to watch Part 2. Because Part 2 is, like, you think, well, in Defying Gravity, you're like, okay, but Part 2 is going to go crazy, and I'm so excited.
Yeah, that's where all the twists and turns come, and
Don't Google anything.
I would say just
Don't
go
Google
and watch.
anything.
Just go and watch the play. That way you get the experience of the twists and turns, but it's still, not like you're reading it and getting it spoiled. It's still like
if you're going to be in LA anytime over the next 3 months, it's at the Pantages starting maybe next week. So you can go see it. It's touring down to San Diego in the spring, so it's around. I mean, support live theater literally always. So if you do find yourself in the opportunity to watch it on stage, it'll certainly be a different experience in the theater. I love the way that they were able to expand on everything. Like, oh, what if we could make the monkeys fly, right? Like, there's just so many things they can't do on a musical stage that they were able to do, and I think they did it beautifully.
Yeah. And the other thing that, I think is really cool is that they are coming out with a version on Christmas where you can sing along.
I will be there.
That is going to be insane. Imagine being an entire theater where everyone's singing Popular Lar at the same time.
Nice.
For some people, that's a nightmare. For other people,
I
it's
was gonna say, I'm not going.
That's cool. But no, they took really good care of this movie. In fact, they planted 9 million flowers for the one scene that, like, you see of all, like, the flowers and stuff. That's really crazy. Tulips, 9 million tulips is what they planted.
Yeah, I thought that was like in Holland or something. Like they just went there, but if they just made that, that's really cool.
Made that.
That's
cool.
No, man, it's really cool. And then a lot of stuff that they talked about was like had real world references. Like, I believe, like, the silver slippers and the green skin and the yellow brick road were about, like, actual, like, economics in that time. Like, the greenbacks and, like, gold and silver. Like, the author did not believe in, like, greenback currency because it gets inflated, and he didn't think it was, like, it would get, like, mishandled and misused by the feds with inflations and stuff like that. And silver and gold were better, which is one of the things that, like, are translated into the book, but it isn't confirmed because this theory came out years after the book, but people believe it. Also, the Oz Dust is actually supposed to be based on the Dust Bowl that happened in America. So, which is, the Wizard of Oz is also based on that because, like, Auntie Anne, everything is all sepia tone, and you see a lot of dust and the tornadoes happening. So a lot of it is, like, reference from, like, the author's, like, real life, what was happening at that time. So it's really, really interesting to see. But now, like, the allegories are still there. Like, whether you're talking about fascism, feminism, intersectionality, it's all real there. So just to give you a heads up, it's darker and based more on the second and third book and not the happy musical Return to Oz the movie. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's darker, but it's still a kids movie. But, like, the kids movies in the 90s were, like, never ending story, dark.
Yeah.
Like, those are for kids, but still kind of scary.
Yeah.
I don't think that you as an adult will get like actually scared by it.
Maybe one scene with the things on roller skates.
Yeah, the roller skate guys. But yeah, it's definitely a darker tone.
Okay.
But still categorized in that.
Okay.
It's like I can't believe they showed little kids this type thing, you know, like Labyrinth.
Yeah, but you as an adult will be fine.
Yeah, yeah, but it is a little bit darker.
Check it out.
But it's a good watch. It's
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's really all I have. Is there anything that we have not talked about that you wanted to touch on? Anyone have anything? If
Not that I can remember. No, like
yeah. Well, if not, well, thank you everybody so much for being here. But before we go, one last time, let people know where they can find you. Sarah, can you start us off?
Yeah. I'm at Ms_Marauder on TikTok and Instagram. We do a lot of mostly our thing is cosplay.
Cool.
So we if you want to see the process of making a tiny Paul Atreides cosplay for my 8-year-old daughter, come on over to Instagram and see that. Yeah, so we do a lot of conventions and stuff.
Very cool.
That's where we are.
All right. And Natasha, where can people find you?
Yeah, they can find me on YouTube. It's called Sham Ki Chai. I'll put it in the comments. And I interview Pakistanis doing really cool things all over the world. So watch it if you have some time.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And guys, don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, leave some comments, and let us know some Easter eggs that you might have found that we have not been able to talk about yet. And until next time, guys, Salaam, nerds.